Your initial reaction to the speech, were you surprised at how much Donald Trump spent talking about North Korea and basically none on trade?
Well, it was a relief, really. We've seen two Donald Trumps this trip, both in Japan and Korea. We've seen President Trump with his personal views, the extemporaneous asides in Japan, talking about trade and how the U.S. is going to best Japan as the world's #1 economy. And then we've seen Donald Trump stick to the script on occasion, and that's what he did in front of the National Assembly today. It was a pretty conventional speech in terms of American reassurance. He rehearsed a lot of Korean history, which wouldn't have been news to his audience there in Seoul. But it was a conventional speech. He didn't threaten to abrogate any trade agreements, and he didn't threaten fire and fury. So all things considered, that's progress.
And Aaron, which one of those two Donald Trump should we take serious now?
I think it's going to be a constant struggle between Donald Trump and his advisors. His advisors are pretty conventional. They lead institutions that are pretty conventional, State Department, the Pentagon. And we're going to continue to see that play out over the course of this Asia trip. And so he'll fly to China next. And, there, too, there are some differences between his advisors and him. For instance, on trade, Donald Trump's very interested in pressing China on trade deficits. His advisors are more interested in market access. So we'll continue to see this play out over the next week or so and through the remainder of his presidency.
How does the agenda change, though, as we move into China, as you mentioned there? I mean, he's set to take off for Beijing in a couple of hours. He should be landing there, in fact, in about 2 hours from now. I mean, honestly, I didn't expect we'd be this deep into the North Korean conversation, even before the Beijing leg.
Right, and this is probably a relatively safe way for Donald Trump to handle this issue. He talked mostly about North Korea in front of the National Assembly, not South Korea. And that's a subject on which most South Koreans and Americans agree. He probably went a little bit too hard on some of the human rights issues in North Korea in a way that wouldn't have resonated with some of his South Korean audience. But it was a relatively safe way to handle it. In China, I think he will be pressing Chinese officials to get tougher on North Korea, to enforce sanctions more vigorously. But the Chinese are going to try and win him over with pomp and circumstance and get him to back off some of the tough language that he's previously used with regard to them.